Hola Geometry Niños. Today's lesson is titled Notes 4.4, Distance Formula. So make sure you have your notes set up. A couple important things, make sure you write down exactly what I write down. Your notes should look exactly like my notes. All right? In dealing with the distance formula, we have the distance formula. Very important we know what that is. All right? The distance formula is given to us as d equals the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Again, the 2's and the 1's here, x2 minus x1, that just means like the second x minus the first x. The squared up top here is a mathematical operator. We actually square that. Okay, we use this distance formula to find the distance between 2 points or the length of a segment on the coordinate plane. Distance and length mean the exact same thing. So this is kind of saying the exact same thing. We can find the distance between 2 points or the length of a segment on a coordinate plane. All right, we get the distance formula from the Pythagorean theorem. That's why we started with a Pythagorean theorem. And so we've already found distance with the Pythagorean theorem. Now we can apply it toward the distance formula. Here's a simple diagram if you guys want to kind of draw this out. If this is on the coordinate plane, the distance going back and forth this direction is on the x-axis. So to find the distance between this, we're going to subtract the x's from each other. That's the length. And then to find the y-axis, we go up and down. We subtract those. That's the distance from between the y-coordinate. So therefore, to find the distance over here, that would be our c side on the Pythagorean theorem. I can take this side squared plus this side squared, and that's equal to the distance squared. You might see this now, that once I take the square root of both sides, I get the distance formula. If you don't see that, don't worry about it. We have the distance formula. It'll be given to you. Just make sure you know how to use it. So let's use it. Example numero uno. Find the length of the segment below. All right, we've already done one way like we said with the Pythagorean theorem, but I want to use the distance formula. To use the distance formula, I need to know what the coordinates are. So the coordinates of my point here is +1, -2. And my coordinates over here, I've got -2, +1, 2, 3, 4. So 2, 4. All right, find the length of the segment. The length is equal to the distance, same thing. And my distance is the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Okay, I write it there so we have reference point coming back to it each time. I can just substitute in the values of each things. All right, so our distance. We need to know what my coordinates are. The x2 and x1 is found by our coordinates here. I'm going to call this one my x1, y1, and then down here my x2, y2. Does it matter? No, it could be switched as long as you keep them the same both times. It is important that if this is x1, this is y1, and if this is x2, this is y2. Oh my gosh, you might be yelling at the screen, Mr. Butterball, it's a -2, it's a -2, it's a -2. I'm so sorry. Again, I do make mistakes, so this should be a -2. Make sure you have that. This coordinate is -2, +4. Okay, so when we put that into the distance formula, I have the distance is equal to the square root. Very important you keep that square root sign going. Most common mistake I see is people don't keep that square root sign and they get the whole thing wrong because they dropped it. All right, x2 is my 1, so I've got 1 minus my x1, which was -2 squared, plus y2 is -2 minus my y1, which is 4 squared. All right, so I'm going to keep that going, keep the square root. 1 minus a -2, 1 minus a -2 is the exact same thing as 1 plus 2. So 1 plus 2 is 3, and that's squared, plus I've got -2 minus 4, which is -6 squared, there, all right, is equal to the square root of 3 squared is 9, -6 squared is +36. Very important, on this step, you should always get two positive numbers. If you got one negative, you either put it in the calculator wrong or you're not thinking that a negative squared is like -6 times -6, which is a positive. All right? And then inside, 9 plus 36 is 45. I'm going to give myself some more room here. All right, and then I have the square root of 45. I can simplify that. of 45 is the same thing as 5 times 9, and 9 is the same thing as 3 times 3. So the square root of 45 is equal to the square root of 5 times 3 times 3. I got those pair of 3's. 3 times 3 is 9, and the square root of 9 is 3, so I can bring this pair of 3's out. So I've got 3 square root 5 is the distance of this line segment on the coordinate plane. Let's do one more. All right, find the distance between the points -3, -3, -7, and 0, 3. Notice here, again, one says find the length, one says find the distance, exact same thing. All right, I'm going to call this my x1, this is my y1, this is my x2, this is my y2. That really helps me. All right, the distance is the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. All right, x2 minus x1 is 0 minus a -3 squared. Uh-oh, forgot my square root sign. Don't do that, kids. Y2 minus y1 is 3 minus a -7 squared. All right? Square root of 0 minus a -3 is like 0 plus 3. That's going to be 3 squared. And then plus 3 minus a -7 is like 3 plus 7. That's 10 squared. Square root of 3 squared is 9. 10 squared is 100. And so we get the square root of 109. So you might be asking yourself, can we simplify that? Well, the way we know if we can simplify that is if we can divide 109 evenly. Check a calculator. I can check with the calculator. First off, I know how far do I check if I take the square root of 109. I can see it's approximately 10.4. I do not need to check any numbers greater than 10 to see if it's divisible by those things. So clear that. Is 109 divisible by 2? Well, no, because it's not an even number. Is 109 divisible by 3? Can I do 109 divided by 3? No, it's not a whole number. What about 109 divisible by 5? It shouldn't be because it did not end in 0 or 5. Is 109 divisible by 7? No, it's not. Is 109 divisible by 9? No. So I cannot simplify this. It actually is just the square root of 109, and I could even write the decimal approximation, which is 10.4. Let me write that down here. The square root of 109 is approximately equal to 10.4. So this would be our answer. All right? Make sure you're familiar with the distance formula. Use the distance formula in the WSQ. There's a question there. Solve for it and bring it to class tomorrow.